Tampa, Florida, USA. In one corner of Tampa, on the 13th April 2026, a man writes a very strange question in ChatGPT. The question was, what happens if a human is put in a black garbage bag and thrown in the dumpster? When GPT replies to him saying that this thing is wrong, it is dangerous, he immediately asks the next question without waiting for a moment. How would they even find out that I did that thing? Now, at the same time, something completely different was happening on the other side of Tampa. April 16th, 2026. It was the last day when 27-year-old Nahida Brishti, a bright and ambitious PhD student, was seen on the campus of the University of South Florida. Nahida was originally from Bangladesh, and in 2025 she had come to the US to begin her research career. She was a very promising student, which is why big things were expected from her. But her sudden disappearance on 16th April was a very strange thing, because she was a very socially involved person. Now, Nahida's absence was first noticed by one of her friends. Nahida had planned a meeting with her friend that evening, but when Nahida did not come to meet her in the evening, her friend started getting worried, because Nahida never did this. Even if she had to cancel a meeting, she would at least inform her through a call or text. But now the situation was such that she was not responding to her friend's calls and texts either. Nahida had become completely silent at this point. Her phone had been turned off, and in a way, Nahida's very existence had disappeared. Now, whenever a person goes missing, the first response of any person, or the people around them, is to contact the person who is closest to that missing person. And in this case, if there was anyone closest to Nahida, it was Jamil Nimon. Jamil was also pursuing a PhD from the same university as Nahida. Jamil was also originally from Bangladesh. The two had been quite close to each other for a long time. Their families and friends also knew each other very well. So if anyone knew where Nahida had suddenly disappeared to, it had to be Jamil. But when an attempt was made to contact him, everyone got another big shock because there was no trace of Jamil either. His phone was also unreachable, and now this case had become even more confusing. On the surface, this looks like a typical crime of passion case because it involves two people who are in love. It sounds like a case we have all heard before, but the truth of this case is so unexpected and so disturbing that hearing it will give you goosebumps. And there is one question whose clues I will keep giving you, and that is, who exactly was this ChatGPT guy? This is USF double case. Nahida Brishti was from Bangladesh. Before coming to the US, she studied chemical engineering at Bangladesh's Noakhali Science and Technology University, and then she decided to pursue a PhD at the University of South Florida in the US to begin her career in research and development. Now, those who have pursued a PhD will know that it is no joke, because pursuing and completing a PhD is a very big challenge that is not everyone's cup of tea. So the fact that Nahida was leaving her family and going to another country just tells you how important this PhD was to her. When she arrived at this university, she was completely alone. Living alone in a new country, a new culture, and the pressure of studies is difficult for anyone. But in an unknown city in an unknown country, Nahida had found a person in whom she found a home away from home. And this person was none other than Jamil Nimon himself. Jamil was also from Bangladesh like Nahida, and he had already been pursuing his own PhD there before Nahida joined USF. Unlike Nahida, he was not pursuing engineering but a PhD in geography and environmental studies, because both of them came from the same background. They grew up in the same culture. They spoke the same language. That is why it did not take any time for the two of them to become close. With every passing day, Nahida and Jamil's friendship was becoming deeper. According to Jamil's brother in Bangladesh, Jamil often used to talk about Nahida at home. He used to tell his family that Nahida was a very good and talented girl. Jamil never got tired of praising Nahida, about how she sang very well or how tasty food she cooked. He was obviously in love with Nahida, and Nahida also felt the same way. So in a short time, the two of them started dating each other. Now, this was not a casual relationship by any means, because both of their families knew about each other, and they were also very supportive of their relationship. But after hearing all this, the question remains, if these two were a loving couple, and their family members also knew about them, then what exactly happened on 16th April 2026, that first Nahida and then Jamil suddenly disappeared? See, Whatever the reason behind Nahida's disappearance was, Jamil definitely had a hand in it. Because not only was he the closest to her, but since Nahida's disappearance, Jamil had also disappeared quite suspiciously. On the 17th April, police authorities became involved in this case, and they first searched Nahida's workplace, which was located on the university campus. There, they found Nahida's belongings, such as her lunchbox, her iPad, and her MacBook. And after seeing all these things, the police were thinking that Nahida was going to return to her workplace the next day. Because obviously, why would someone leave their lunchbox, their MacBook, at their workplace? And this also proves one thing. Something unexpected had happened to Nahida on 16th April, something that was outside her usual routine. But the police were still quite confused about the whole picture and about Nahida's entire situation. So next, they were going to search Jamil's apartment. Jamil actually lived in a locality called Avalon Heights outside the university campus. And he was not living there alone, because 2 other people also lived with him in the same apartment. So the police were sure that they would definitely get some clue about this case from Jamil's apartment. So when the police arrived there and questioned both of his roommates, the police learned about a very disturbing detail. One of Jamil's roommates, Rashid, told them that on the evening of 16th April, he had seen their 3rd roommate, Hisham Abu Ghabi, carrying heavy cardboard boxes out of his room in a cart. Later, he threw them into the trash compartment outside the apartment. Now, why was this such an important detail? To understand this, it is very important for us to understand what kind of person this Hisham Abu Ghabi was. Hisham was a 26-year-old guy who used to study at the same university where Jamil and Nahida were pursuing their PhDs. I am saying used to study because in 2023, for some reasons, he had to leave his studies midway. Now, before moving into this Avalon Heights apartment, Hisham used to live in the same house with his family. Hisham was the eldest son of his family, and he had one younger brother. According to his family, Hisham had always been a very supportive and helpful eldest son of the family, and people who knew him described him as a cool guy. But all of this changed when Hisham started studying for a Bachelor of Management at USF. Right after enrolling at the university, his family members or the people around him started noticing many changes in Hisham's behavior, and day by day, these changes happening inside him were becoming even more aggressive. The family said, and I quote, that all of this started happening inside Hisham when he came under a bad influence and started smoking cannabis and marijuana. Now you would argue this thing, all my friends who consume this green, they would argue this thing that marijuana is consumed by quite a lot of people in the world, but not all of them go crazy, right? But then what happened inside Hisham that after smoking marijuana, so many drastic changes started happening inside him. Now, it is a little difficult to tell the exact reason for this, but according to research, such changes can be observed in some individuals because of genetic factors, and even consuming marijuana in frequent extreme doses can be one reason behind this. But whatever the reason was, the sanity inside Hisham was gradually disappearing day by day, and one day, he reached his breaking point. In May 2023, his own family members pressed misdemeanor battery charges against him. Yes, you heard that right. His own family did this because they said that Hisham had assaulted his mother and his younger brother, and they were not lying, because when the police came to arrest him, he was behaving extremely unstable. According to his younger brother, Hisham had serious mental issues. In the middle of the night, he would suddenly start shouting that he was God and that everyone should bow their heads before him. So Hisham's family had been putting up with this strange behavior of his for a long time. But finally, they had enough when he started showing violence in the house. Now, when the police deputies were taking him away, he kept telling them again and again, "I was acting in self-defense." And his younger brother had threatened him first. That is why he had done all of this. So in his head, he had not done anything wrong, and he did not have any remorse or feeling of guilt after hitting his own mother and brother. Normally, after being arrested, he would have gone to jail, but unfortunately, that did not happen, because Hisham's family did not have the money for prosecution. So instead of sending him to jail, he was placed under observation for substance abuse. But this did not have much benefit, because only a few months later, in September 2023, a sentence was made against him. Now initially, when I told you about Nahida and Jamil's disappearance, I am pretty sure many of you might have thought that it was a typical boyfriend-girlfriend case. But as soon as Hisham enters the picture, the story behind Jamil and Nahida's disappearance takes a completely different turn. And when the police finally came to search the Avalon Heights apartment with a warrant, they found such undeniable proof that completely changed the direction of this case. Now, if you remember, when the police spoke to Jamil's roommate Rashid, he informed the police about Hisham's behavior, in which he was carrying heavy boxes out of his room on the night of the 16th and throwing them outside into the compartment. Therefore, on the 23rd April, the police first opened that trash compartment and they found some very disturbing things inside. They found Jamil's classes, his wallet, and his USF student ID. Not only that, they also found his shirt, which had blood on it and was torn in several places. And it was the same shirt he was last seen wearing on the college campus. And the fact that there was blood on this shirt meant only one thing. Jamil was not just missing, but something was seriously wrong with him. But it was not just Jamil's belongings. The police also found the case of Nahida's phone there, suggesting that Nahida had come there on 16th April. And the most concerning thing the police found was a floor mat that was completely soaked. So many pieces of evidence were enough to understand or to know that something bad had happened in this apartment. So after knowing all of this and finding all of this, the police immediately elevated Jamil and Nahida's missing status to endangered, which basically meant that based on their findings, Jamil and Nahida had either lost their lives or were in danger of losing their lives. Now, after knowing all of this, the police had probable cause on the basis of which they could interrogate Hisham, and they could also enter his apartment and search it. They first picked up Hisham and started questioning him because he was now the prime suspect in this case. The first thing they noticed when they saw him was that there were cuts and bruises all over his body, and his left pinky finger was heavily bandaged. When the police asked him, "What happened to your finger?" he told the police in a very calm tone, "I cut my finger while cutting onions." But the police people were not buying the story. The police already knew that all of this was Hisham's, but the police were not buying his story. They already knew that all of this was Hisham's doing, because before 23rd April, they had traced the digital footprints of Jamil and Nahida. And surprisingly, on the 16th, Jamil's phone location and Hisham's car location matched exactly in terms of timing. Now, how did the police know this? As soon as they received information from Rashid about Hisham and his past behavior, the police began scanning traffic footage. Hisham's Hyundai Genesis G80 was pinpointed at different locations, and surprisingly, Jamil's phone had also passed through all of those same locations before finally stopping in Tampa's Clearwater County. So, the police already had a lot of evidence against Hisham. They were simply cross-questioning him, hoping that either he would slip up or they could fill in the gaps in the story he was creating through his statements. During the interrogation, Hisham remained extremely cold and non-reactive, as if he had absolutely nothing to do with any of it. When the police asked him whether he had met Jamil and Nahida on the 16th, Hisham clearly denied it, saying that he had never met them. But this was a trap set by the police. As soon as he said that, they showed Hisham Jamil's last phone location, along with the location of his car from the traffic data, and asked, "If that's the case, then how can Jamil's last location and your car's location at the exact same time be the same?" After seeing this, Hisham became slightly nervous and gave them another lie, saying that he had gone to Clearwater to look for fishing spots. But the police then showed him that this was not just a single incident. Throughout his entire trip, Jamil's phone location and Hisham's car location were matching. And then, trying to cover it up, he said, "Oh yes, I actually met Jamil and I was giving him a lift in my car." So, basically, Hisham was refusing to accept responsibility for anything. And every time the police questioned him, he kept changing his story again and again, making it increasingly obvious that he was lying. But the most dangerous thing, which perhaps even Hisham did not know, and which you might not have thought about either, was that while the police were keeping Hisham busy by interrogating him and asking him questions, another team from the Tampa Police Department went to Hisham's apartment to search it. And as soon as they entered the apartment, the smell immediately suggested that extensive deep cleaning had recently been carried out. So the police used luminol spray, which can help detect traces of blood. And to their surprise, after spraying the luminol, a very large human feet-shaped pool appeared on the floor of Hisham's bedroom, an area he had recently cleaned. This suggested that a person had probably been kept in that spot for quite some time, resulting in a large pool of blood. Hisham probably thought that cleaning the area would erase all the evidence, but all it did was push the blood deeper into the floor, which allowed the luminol to reveal its pattern clearly. So on one side, during the interrogation, Hisham was creating these stories. First, that he had never met Jamil, and second, that Jamil and Nahida had never even come to his apartment. And on the other side, the police found so many pieces of clothing inside Hisham's apartment that they were enough to prove that more than one person's body had been kept on that floor. Meanwhile, after the interrogation, the police calmly allowed Hisham to return home because they were going to keep him under surveillance for the next 24 hours. Now, here is one very frustrating thing that I initially felt. And perhaps you might feel the same way. If the police already had so much evidence and so many pieces of information, then why didn't they arrest Hisham? There are also some questions in this case that still remain unanswered. First and foremost, Hisham targeting Jamil can be explained to some extent, given that Jamil had filed a complaint against him. But ultimately, why did he kill Nahida? What was her fault? You might think that maybe when Nahida and Jamil were together in the Avalon Heights apartment, there must have been some altercation between them and Hisham, because of which he lost control, and in a fit of rage, killed both of them. But this is not true. Because through Hissam's phone, the police found out that whatever he had done was not an unplanned act. Rather, it was a premeditated move by him. According to the digital evidence found on his phone, he had started preparing for all these things from 7th April itself. He had ordered duct tape from Amazon on 7th April, and then on the 11th he ordered other things like trash bags, fire starter, lighter, fuel, and cleaning supplies. But an even more disturbing thing was found when the police opened his ChatGPT conversations. He had originally deleted everything from his phone. But the forensic team recovered his search history, through which all of this came to light. On the 13th April, he asked ChatGPT, "What happens if a human is put in a black garbage bag and thrown in the dumpster?" And when ChatGPT responded that this is not right, this is dangerous, then he asked ChatGPT, how would they find out? And then on the 15th, he had more conversations with ChatGPT, in which he asked how to change a car's chassis number, and then asked whether he could keep a gun at home without a license or not. On the day of the incident, he had ordered even more cleaning materials from DoorDash at night to the Avalon Heights apartment, which was also noticed by Rashid, who was living with him. Not only that, after making Jamil and Nahida disappear on the 19th, he asked even more suspicious things. Has there been someone who survived a sniper bullet to the head? Will my neighbor hear my gun? Will Apple know who is the new iPhone user after the previous user is there? Is there a water temperature that immediately? All of these queries are so disturbing because it only suggests that apart from Jamil and Nahida, this man was also thinking about doing more things. Just think about this thing. If the police had been even slightly late in detaining this man, then perhaps someone else's life could also have been taken by this man. All of this proves that this was a guy who was not right in his head. But again, the conclusion of this case is still that, until now, there has been no explanation for why he ultimately killed Nahida. But my best guess, or rather my opinion, in this case is that Nahida was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe he was initially targeting Jamil himself, but because Nahida was there, he killed her too, so that no one would find out about his crime. But that is just my guess. You guys let me know what you think about this. And with this case ends right here, guys. And with that, I hope that you guys are happy and healthy. Please be close to loved ones, guys, and I will see you in the next one.